Hi, and welcome to this fourth session of the McKnight's Workforce Development Forum. You're tuned in to Fighting Back Against Staffing Shortages. I'm McKnight's Executive Editor, Jim Berkland, and I'm your moderator. Boy, sometimes it seems like fighting staff shortages could be another name for the long-term and senior care sectors, doesn't it? This session you're tuned into right now is going to tackle this huge challenge and give us all some interesting new perspectives to consider. I'll introduce our speakers and we'll jump right into the main body of the presentation in a moment, but first we have some housekeeping matters to take care of. Today's slides are not going to be available for download. You're going to have a video presentation. We're going to give it to you straightforward and you'll be able to talk with everybody and see right there because we do have a live Q&A session near the end of the presentation. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to tap them out and submit them directly to us starting right now. Those we don't get to in real time will be answered afterward. Now, if you're having any audio problems, please first check the volume control on your machine. Believe it or not, this is the most common cause of these problems. You also have a help button to use if your own troubleshooting doesn't work. Now, about CE. Regarding continuing education, this educational offering has been reviewed by the National Continuing Education Review Service of the National Association of Long-Term Care Administrator Boards. It has been approved for 1 clock hour. However, you need to stay tuned into this event for its entirety during the original broadcast in order to receive a certificate. You can track CE requirements through the course completion tracker, which is accessed through the last icon in the area below the open webinar panel. Once you've achieved 50 viewing minutes, a View Certificate button will display and the required viewing duration will have a green checkbox. You can then view or save your certificate. A copy also will be mailed to you afterward. Now, we'd like to note that this program is made possible by support from Easy Shifts. Please visit them at easyshifts.com. Finally, this session will be archived and available on demand shortly after this live broadcast. You can access it again, or others can experience it for the first time by simply going to the registration page to enter the studio. The URL is mcknights.com/021523 Workforce Development Forum. That's all smushed together, but don't worry, we're going to show that to you on a slide at the end too. Now I'd like you to meet our presenters. Chad Liptow is the Executive Director for Maple Crest Manor and Maple Crest at Home of Ripon, Wisconsin. He leads the executive leadership team, providing organizational guidance and critical input on the strategic direction of both businesses. His career includes more than 30 years of experience in healthcare. Marissa Janke serves as the Campus Administrator and Housing Director for Eagle Crest Communities in La Crosse, Wisconsin. She directly oversees independent living, assisted living, and memory care, and is serving as the Housing Director, supervising directors at 3 other assisted living and memory care communities within the organization. She has 10 years of experience as a nursing home administrator and has previously overseen operations of skilled nursing facilities as well. Finally, Michael Christensen is the founder of Easy Shifts, a company dedicated to helping providers create staff schedules that ensure high standards of patient care while achieving employee work-life balance. Well, Michael, with that, I'd like to hand it over to you so you can moderate today's discussion.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks everyone for attending. We hope this discussion can be interesting, fun, but especially informative and helpful to you in your operations. I hardly even need to say this because we're all too painfully aware that the effects of the staffing shortage has had in our industry. But as Jim mentioned, today we're going to talk about how we can fight back. One thing that you'll notice is a common trend. You watch nurses on LinkedIn when they're quitting, they're saying they've had enough, they've reached their limit, or anything they've said. You see, they all want flexibility. They want flexibility. They want to have a little bit of control or say over when and how they work. And an interesting trend has developed in recent years. If they haven't been able to get that flexibility and a healthy work schedule from a full-time position at one of the facilities where they work, they've been actually able to find that elsewhere. They've been able to find that by working as a traveling nurse through an agency, or even by working one shift per diem shifts through different apps that enable them to pick up nearby shifts. They're essentially able to work when they want and generally make even more money per hour than they've traditionally made at their previous jobs. And many of these companies came into existence in the last 2 to 3 years, making record profits. And we know that those high costs of using those services has really taken a hit to your profits. But it does prove one thing. It proves that your staff want flexibility. And even if they're not leaving the healthcare industry, that's what they're looking for to stay. But our talk today is going to talk about how you can offer that yourselves. You can offer those things yourselves, fight back against the shortage, win back your own staff. Couple things we'll talk about as well is what kind of a reputation does your facility have? Why does that matter? Is it viewed positively as a place people love to work? Or is it the kind of place they might warn their friends about? We're going to get into the mind of people who are considering a nursing career. What does the industry look like to them? Does it look like there's a good future for them in that industry? And what are their friends who are working in the nursing field telling them about it? Is money really that much of a motivator? So we'll really talk about in this discussion positive things that we can do to really have a positive impact and fight back against the shortage. So to kind of get into that, we'll have this broken down into 4 segments. First, we'll talk about things we can do related to recruitment. Then we'll talk about retention. And then we'll talk about employee wellness, what we can do for that. And then finally, how that all sort of ties into providing a better care for your residents. And of course, with me is Chad and Marissa, and a special thanks to Marissa. She's joining us even on her maternity leave. She really wanted to be here, so we really appreciate you being here for that. So first kind of question, just to kick it off here, Chad or Marissa, so how often have you been needing to use agency staff over the last couple of years?
Well, I can start with that. Well, hello, everyone. During the pandemic, I was receiving calls from agencies, staffing agencies, 2 to 3 times a week saying, we have a lot to offer you. We can help you fill your open positions. And I've been the director here 11 years, and not once have I ever used agency staff. I've worked on just building a good core team that works well together, and we help each other out and cover for each other, and have not needed to use agency at all.
Wow, really? Wow, that's impressive. You don't hear that too often. Thank you, Chad. Marissa, you have any thoughts on
And
that?
yeah, like Mike said, I am on maternity leave, so I will apologize if you guys hear any baby giggles or cries or anything in the background here. But at our organization, we have used agency a little bit. Specifically at the facilities with which I supervise, we do not use agency at this moment. It's more of a kind of like a pinch hitting situation. So, what comes to mind most recently, about a year ago, we had 3 of our 4 night shifts open in one of our assisted living. All 3 became vacant at the same time, rather unexpectedly for 2 of them, with moving away. And so then, when you have such a short, small pool to pull from, that is when we used agency. But we were able to hire back and fill those positions fairly quickly. So it was only about a month that we needed to use those agency staff.
Okay, great. So generally speaking, not often, but there's been a few occasions. Very good. So just kind of a high level question. From your perspective, where are all the workers? Where do they go? Why are we in this shortage?
Well, that's a challenging question, Michael. I think everybody's wondering that, and I think we all wish we had a magic answer to know where they are. You can drive down Main Street, and every place you see has a help wanted sign right now. In our industry, the senior living industry, prior to the pandemic, there were a lot of new facilities that opened up, and kind of waiting for that baby boom rush to start filling our facilities. And so some of the people were hired by other facilities. Some we know left healthcare for other opportunities. Some are scared. Some were scared when COVID came along and left. So that there's a lot of different reasons why people aren't here. But it really has been a challenge. We've all been wondering where the workers are.
I think it's just a difficult time too for all of us, all industries, right? And especially in our assisted living worlds, you don't need any special certification in order to work as a caregiver, and so those people truly have the world at their fingertips. And so we have to figure out what sets us apart and why they would want to choose us. But the saturation of the market for everyone looking for employees is, I think, a huge factor for us as well.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
I think even caregiving used to be a great entry level for somebody wanting to get into healthcare, exploring a nursing career, or some other ancillary services that are in healthcare. And we're just not seeing as many people come through the doors right now, especially some of the younger people that we had seen in previous years.
Yeah. So, Marissa, do you have any thoughts on, how leadership is handling this or viewing this?
Yeah, I think how our prospective and current employees view the work industry and the long-term care industry is based upon the leadership and the thoughts and feelings that their friends have shared with them and their coworkers or colleagues, and just kind of that overall feeling that they get when they walk in the door. And most people decided that they wanted to be a caregiver because they care about people and they want to feel like they're doing a really good job and that they're making an impact and making a difference. And so balancing that leadership with ensuring that the employees are feeling as though they are making a positive impact and that they are valued and that they're appreciated and that they are not only contributing to the resident care, but the culture of the community is I think a really important piece on empowering those employees to feel like they're part of something versus just going to a job.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's really all connected, right? From the individual hiring of the caregivers to the care given to the residents and even how the community perceives it. Makes me wonder, because you mentioned culture. Do facilities have a reputation within a community? I mean, whether it's within potential workforce or even just the community at large, what would you have to say about that?
Oh, I would say absolutely. And, probably we in the industry, we all know our facilities where we would say, yep, I would send my family member there. I would encourage an employee to work there. And others where we would say, maybe you should reconsider that choice. But I think that's a really, really big impact that we have, right? Because we as the members of the long-term care community, so to speak, versus then just the general public, and how do we shape and control that narrative of the general public who may not know anything about the community with which they're walking into. They just know this is the nursing home or assisted living a few blocks down the road from my house, and I'm gonna get a job here. How do we ensure that they feel confident from day one that this is the right choice for them?
Yeah, that's great.
I would agree with Marissa. In fact, last night I was working with a brand new employee and training her, and she made a statement to me. She said, this is really the ultimate, being a caregiver is really the ultimate customer service job, isn't it? And so we talked a little bit about that, and I thought that's really the mentality that I look for in a new caregiver. So I recently hired somebody from a facility in our area that didn't have the best reputation. They had a reputation for a lot of drama, a lot of turnover, heavy turnover, a lot of families disappointed in the care that their loved ones were receiving and such. And I had hired an employee from there, and it's interesting because she came on here not knowing that how important that culture is. And we work on culture every day here in our facility. It's an ongoing issue that we talk about all the time. And she knew from day one when she started at her other position that it was not where she wanted to be, but she felt stuck there because of her um, involvement with the residents. She just became attached to the residents. She ultimately left there and joined us. And she's probably one of my biggest referral sources right now in terms of new employees, because she is telling people and to contact me for interviews because she didn't know it could be different. So once you get employees like that, they can be your best advocate to helping you get new staff.
Interesting. Yeah. So your own good hires lead to even more good hires. That's really interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a few more thoughts about culture, reputation. You know, what what can you what do you try to do? What do you try to look out for to try to maintain that positive culture? Or what things do you think are important?
In my own facility, one of the things that I look for is I always have my ear to the ground. Any type of drama or issues that may come up, because there will be issues, we try to handle immediately and to keep those to a minimum, because that almost always leads to kind of a toxic environment and leads to gossip and drama. And so our team knows that um, we look for that, and we point it out. Our whole team. You don't have to be a management team member to point that out, and so we all work really hard at that.
Absolutely. It's that lack of drama that Michael or that Chad was mentioning, and having them just exude that kindness and compassion. I always say that I can teach people how to do the job, but I can't teach them to be kind. And that's really what we're looking for. You're wanting someone that makes you feel comfortable taking care of a really vulnerable person. And I think the more we can find people who just genuinely want to be there, and then encouraging them to want to continue to show up, right? We have to ensure that what we're saying we're going to do for them is what we actually deliver. Sorry about this, you guys. But that's I think a big piece of it, is not making empty promises with these employees on the beginning, helping them ensure that they really understand every piece that they're getting into with work, and that if they're going to work direct care, what level of care does that mean for them, and ensuring that they're understanding all of that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Marissa. We actually have 4 participants on our webinar. It's great, and we should put that on the resume.
Right. I apologize for his his
I think it's great. We
Future
love
employee.
Exactly.
Right.
Very good. So what I'm hearing, it's if you have a healthy culture, it leaves the new hires with a good feeling. It makes them feel, this is the kind of place I want to work, right? And you see these pithy sayings on LinkedIn all the time, where it's like, how you feel Sunday night before going to work tells you a lot about the culture, right? Your employees can actually want to go to work, can actually want to be there. But how does that, and you kind of hinted on a little bit, both of you, but how does that impact care for your residents or even the patients that might be in a skilled nursing facility?
I noticed it in our facility right away. The families will let me know, and residents will let me know. They can tell if we're taking care of our employees. We'll hear them talking, and so I've always felt that if we take care of our employees, they'll take care of our residents. I was touring a family just recently, about 2 weeks ago, and it was interesting because the son asked employees as I was touring them, do you like working here? So we had to stop and talk to each employee, because he was sort of interviewing the employees as we went along. And it's one of the first times that they've done that. And so I let the employees speak. I wanted them to share what it is that they really like. They spoke real positive of our program here, and I wanted them to share how they felt. And I thought that was an interesting point that the son was making.
Very definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I've had that exactly as well too, Chad, where people will ask, the
Yeah.
families are really starting to shop for facilities more. They're understanding that they have options, right? And they want to choose what
Mhm.
they think is going to be the best for their family member. And it's not just the physical atmosphere that they're providing, but the quality of care as well. And so
Mhm.
they ask for the how long are you, what's your most tenured staff? And of course,
Okay.
we've got some that are brand new, but some that are very experienced as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, great thoughts. Yeah, and I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about it right now, but I know you mentioned before, Chad, that it does matter how good you do at attracting the private pay residents, right?
Mhm.
Because that definitely
Right.
affects the bottom line, affects the
Right.
revenues. So, your own staff are in a way selling your facility for you. So it
Right.
all ties together. Well, let's talk about some other practical things we can do, particularly around hiring, improving hiring. So, like when you have a job listing, you'll see many will have been figuring out that it's very helpful to display uh, the wage info up front. Anything, Chad, anything you've found helpful with the job listings?
I do. I never used to when I first started working in this industry. I didn't. You didn't see a lot of hourly wages posted in the ads. Now I post the hourly wages. I post shift premiums. I post the benefits, health, dental, 401k. I post all of that right in the ads. I even talk about our overtime policy that. When does somebody qualify for overtime and how does that all work? I post that all in the ads. They have those questions. They want to know that information. Often they want to know that before they even are willing to set up an interview. And so I post all of that information right away. And of course, during an interview, we get more into detail and it gives me a chance to explain it. But I'm not afraid to post any of that right in the ad.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Another kind of avenue that a couple of our customers have shared with me is just this idea of being connected to the local schools. I'm just going to read a quote from one of our customers who isn't participating today, but he said that one thing we've had success with is in partnering with local school districts to have students who are working towards healthcare come and work with us. They typically can work the PM shift and weekends, which is a shift of usual need. We have also found that they do a really good job for the most part. Other than that, just doing the best we can to make sure our team feels appreciated, valued, respected, and treated fairly is crucial. So, any thoughts on connecting with the local schools that you've been able to try?
Yeah, we're real fortunate. We have a private liberal arts college right in our community here, and I'm able to sponsor events through their Center for Career and Professional Development. And so sometimes it's sponsoring meals and events and speakers and that, and it just gets our name out in front of these students. I even have times where I go in and I speak to some of the healthcare classes and talk a little bit about non-traditional healthcare careers, non-traditional nursing paths, and have been able to create interest in coming on board as a caregiver that way. Another thing I do is there's a communications class at this college. They do their final presentation. It's a group project. They do the final presentation right here in our building and they present to our residents. That way, they have an opportunity to come see our building and become interested in it. And so we end up getting employees, potential employees, volunteers from doing just those types of activities.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So, particularly again, kind of touch back again a bit more on the job interview. What can be done during the interview? Like maybe Marissa, do you have any thoughts on things you could be able to do during the interview?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing with the interview is just really trying to get to know the person and then being transparent and honest with them about the various commitments that are required of them. I'm very upfront saying we don't have an attendance issue in our communities. I need you to commit to these 4 shifts or 6 shifts or 8 or whatever the block schedule is that they're committing to and ensure that you're going to be here. Because if you're not, it's not only impactful to your coworkers, of course, but more importantly to our residents. And We aren't a huge community, so we've got 2 staff per assisted living, and then 3 for our memory care unit. So if one of them doesn't show up, it's very impactful. It's not like when I was in the nursing home where we've got 8 CNAs. So if one of them doesn't show up, we can squeeze by and make it work because we've still got 7. And so really hiring the right person right off the bat, and then being really open with them about the level of care that they're going to be providing here. A lot of people, myself included, when I came from the nursing home world, thought assisted living is, kind of a easy breezy, not a ton of work type of industry. But that's really the opposite of the case. If you worked in a nursing home and then worked in the assisted living, it's just a different type of work, and you're doing things in a bigger scope than you're able to do as a CNA in the nursing home. And so ensuring that the staff know, you're going to be potentially handling some serious narcotics. Are you comfortable with that? You're going to be potentially changing catheters and colostomies and nephrostomy tubes and all of those other things that as a CNA, you really don't have a lot of handle with. And so really talking them through from day one. And then if they're like, no, this is not at all what I want to do, offering their application to maybe a sister community that doesn't have that high level of acuity that you do. Or if they say, you know what, that doesn't sound like I want to even be a caregiver, then exploring other options like our environmental services or our food service has been successful for us.
Yeah, great.
I would agree.
Well,
It really is coaching people into the right position. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And so maybe the opportunities that we have isn't the right fit for them. But maybe I have another opportunity for them.
Yeah, very good thought. Yeah. Kind of try to catch up on time a little bit here. I know it's been stated by many management, administrative experts that it's a best HR practice to show all the software tools that they're going to use during the actual interview. Has that been something that you tried?
I do. During my interviews here, I show the electronic medical record program that we use. I show them Easy Shifts, the scheduling program that we use. I bring it right up on the screen and show them all the technology that we use here. It's just I want them to know that we embrace technology and use technology, and I want them to not be afraid of it, and we're willing to train people on it.
And what we do with that piece is we just actually show them Easy Shifts, and we explain to them how this is their block schedule. This is what they are committing to. However, this is how you put a shift up for grabs. This is how you trade with people. This is how you really have that autonomy and that freedom and that flexibility to kind of create your own schedule. And they really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so that's like the interview, but when you do a tour, do you always go with them, Chad, or what other things have you tried?
After one of the things that I learned several years ago is I've found it the most helpful to complete the interview, and at the end of my interview, turn them over to one of our frontline staff who give them a tour of our building, so that they have an opportunity to talk to a frontline staff person. What's nice about that is they get to see the building. They're always interested in that. They get to have a conversation with somebody who's already working here, and they can ask questions. Then I can get feedback from that frontline employee too. With what did they think? How did they think that went? Do they feel that person would be a good match for our team here and our culture?
Yeah, very good. Excellent thoughts. Another suggestion that I've heard offered many times is that being open-minded about hiring caregivers from different age ranges. A lot of times maybe we think of the fresh out of school candidates, but some have observed that hiring in that 30 to 50-year-old range, many times they're more likely to stay longer at the facility and stick there longer. But they may have different needs for their work schedule. They may have other things in their life, so other considerations that need to be thought about. So, all right. Well, thank you for that. So that's our topic on recruitment. Now we're going to talk a little bit about retention, right? So we mentioned before, the staff want flexibility. It's evidenced by the fact that they've been leaving the traditional facility roles. Some have left healthcare completely. The ones that are still in healthcare, a lot of them are staying by working through a traveling nurse position or a staffing agency or even an app that's made that possible. But we spend so much money in this industry trying to hire people, train them. It takes time away from our current staff to provide that training. It really pays to retain. So keys to that, work-life balance. We really want to keep them engaged with the organization. So how is keeping them engaged? How does that help retain staff? What do you think, Marissa?
I think that's a huge piece of it because they feel like they're part of something. They're not just showing up to a job where they clock in and clock out. They feel like this is kind of a family. And I think the more we can bring in the joyful things that they do, whether that's work, whether that's in the community, getting to know them as a person is really, really the way that they feel like they're a part of it. And remembering, that their daughter is in ballet and had a recital this weekend and asking about that. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's really important. And they feel that gratitude then when you celebrate those wins in their personal lives as well. And then, if things aren't going well with their performance or attendance or something, then it's a little bit easier to even discuss with them right away, where you can say, hey, is it something going on with your family at home? Is there something that we can do here? Discussing problems openly with them is a way that they know that we're investing in them as well. We're not just brushing something under the rug or having it be a punitive, shame on you for doing X, Y, Z. We're really looking to how can we help them and how can we encourage them.
I would agree. I think that employees want to know that we take an interest in them. They want to feel included in the business. They want to feel included in even some business decisions that we make. None of our businesses are perfect, right? And so there's issues that come up. And so when it comes to caregiving, I might be the administrator, but I'm certainly not an expert in caregiving. They're more of an expert in caregiving than I am. And so I include them in brainstorming solutions to issues that come up. And if they can help develop some solutions, they can help sell those solutions to other employees. And you get better buy-in from the other employees then too. So it's keeping them involved. They just want to know what's going on in the business. They don't like surprises. We don't like surprises. So it's just keeping them involved in what's going on in the business.
Yeah, I think even they appreciate just having that conversation and being brought to the table, even if it's not their idea that was selected as the solution, just having them say, wow, you value me enough to even ask my opinion. I think everyone's used to having an opinion and having their opinion heard nowadays, especially with social media. So it's a balancing act of hearing them and then, also being open and saying, we might not go with any of these ideas. We might table it and come up with something totally different.
Right.
Yeah, I can certainly see how that would help. Of course, lately we've talked so much about how the pandemic has changed things, but really there's been longer term trends than that even. How would you say, Chad, is the way we need to manage now different than even say 15 years ago? Like what differences have you seen in managing the modern day workforce?
Yeah, it's definitely different. We certainly are in a different time right now when it comes to holding people accountable and managing them. It used to be easy to use your disciplinary policies if you needed to hold people accountable. And right now, I find that I need to use much more of a sort of a coaching approach. Sometimes people's feelings are hurt so easily, and because they could just leave and walk out your door and have a job by tomorrow in another facility. Because there are so many positions that are open out there right now. So we need to be very careful with the conversations that we have with our employees. And as you're having these conversations, letting them know that we care about them. But there's certain things that we need to do, and there's certain reasons. I find that as we're training our employees, it's not just telling them what to do, but they want to know why we have to do certain things and letting them be a part of that. So it's less about punishment and more about helping them be successful, because if they're successful, then we're successful.
Yeah, I think employees are expecting more, we're expecting more of them than 15 years ago, right? Like the assisted living world has changed so much in the level of care that we're providing. The skilled nursing world is very like almost like a hospital setting in some situations. And so we're expecting these people to really think very quickly on their feet, make excellent decisions with very little training sometimes. And so in turn, then the employees are expecting more of us as managers, and we have to deliver for them if we expect them to deliver for us.
That's right.
Great point. You mentioned training. So what impact does training have on retention?
Training, I think, is everything with retention. If staff feel like they are thrown to the floor too quickly or with insufficient training, it's a recipe for them to just walk out the door, because as Chad said, they can go anywhere else and probably have a better experience. And so having a really solid, from day one, here's the plan, and then not deviating from that plan if and when you have call-ins or unexpected vacancies in your staffing, because it will happen. And so you have to just figure out how you can manage your schedule with the people that you have, and putting this new person in a training slot and then not moving them from that training slot until that training is complete, or until they come to you and say, okay, I don't need these last 2 training shifts. I'm ready. I want to go on my own. And then if you do cut their training short based upon their preference, following up with them and ensuring that they are still feeling good, that was the right decision for them. And then, of course, even if it's not cut short, just making sure that you're connecting with them and doing very regular check-ins.
I would agree. I think that it's important to do those check-ins. I think it's important to give praise. When we see people doing things well, don't be afraid to praise them. We have found in our own organization, if we can get somebody to 90 days, you have a much, much greater chance to get them to a year. But if you don't give them good training and they get frustrated, they're going to leave.
Chad, it's funny that you say that, because we found the same in our organization, where we actually celebrate when someone reaches their 100-day marker. And at first, all of us as managers kind of thought that this was kind of 100 days. Come on, why are we celebrating something like that? But it really makes the employees feel valued. And the way we're selling it to the employee as well, and to the long-term employees, is saying to them, if they're frustrated with, they're not understanding XYZ, whatever it may be, reminding them, well, this is only your 30th day. You're only 60 days in. You're not even at your 100 days yet. You should not be expecting yourself to be at the same level as Susie when she's been here for 8 years. And so reminding them that time frame is really important, that although they're out of their training, so to speak, they're not done learning.
Excellent thoughts. Yeah. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of things that we can do to help retain. And it kind of all a lot of these topics all really tie in together. They're all interrelated. Even like the topic of wellness, we kind of touched on this already, but we need to care for the well-being of our staff, right? Because they're facing struggles, they're facing challenges. The world at large has been really difficult for everybody in the last 3 years. So how have you been able to kind of keep an eye on or try to support your staff through these difficult times?
I've found that it's just important to recognize and acknowledge that we all come to work with different things going on in our lives. For so many years, we were taught to leave those problems at the door, come into work, get your work done, and then you can go back home. And I've had to retrain my management team to remember that we've chosen to employ this person. And so when we do that, we employ the whole person. And so we care about them. And so it's a matter of checking in with them. How are things going? Some have their own health issues or health issues with aging parents or children who are sick or children who are struggling in school. And so they just need to know that we care about them. And it's a little bit more hand-holding on our part, but that hand-holding goes a long way in creating a culture of wellness and empathy for everyone.
Yeah, early in my time as an intern, actually, I saw this quote somewhere, which I'm sure many of you have heard, that it says your employees don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's really a huge reason why when we are having bad days, we have to remember and remind ourselves why we went into this industry and be that cheerleader for ourselves and for our staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then oh, sorry. Go
Well,
ahead,
I was just gonna say that sometimes recognizing limitations, and I've found that sometimes breaking the shifts that are open up into smaller segments because they have things that they need to handle. And so instead of making somebody work an 8-hour shift or a 12-hour shift, maybe I can break it down into two 4-hour shifts or 3 4-hour shifts, and get people to kind of work together to help cover that, because people do have things going on in their lives.
Yeah, so having that flexibility to adjust, even sometimes short notice. But one thing we've noticed is that, like, when you're building this culture, like as we've been talking throughout the entire presentation, you're giving them flexibility. You're taking into account their needs, their situation, but you can also, along with that, expect a little bit more responsibility, right?
Right.
Have them take ownership to find their replacement, have them take ownership to do the contacting. So you're not always having to chase people, but that flexibility is really crucial. And for the staff, knowing that they're not getting called at 2 a.m, forced to come into work, or knowing that you're going to let them pick up that partial shift, what impact does it have on their life, would you say?
Well, I think they really appreciate that. Kids get sick. Kids get sick and can't go to school. Well, we've certainly learned that over this last couple of years. Cars break down. We're in Wisconsin, weather at times, and so we all have to be flexible. I know I appreciate the flexibility that I have, and so I know employees appreciate that too.
Yeah, they certainly do. Well, you're both shining examples of how to manage a successful facility and build a positive culture. So we could go on. We in preparing for this, we spent hours having conversations about these things, and we had to try to boil it down into a 50-minute presentation. But there's lots we'd love to hear more comments from those listening. Feel free to reach out with any more questions. Just one last topic here, how this all translates to good care, right? If you take good care of your staff, and Chad, you said this earlier, you felt if you take good care of your staff, they'll take good care of your residents. Any more thoughts on that? Maybe Marissa or Chad?
Yeah, sure. I think oftentimes our tenured staff are giving the best possible care because they've really gotten to know the residents. They know Robert likes his socks put on exactly like this, and he likes his laundry folded in this very specific way. And they're able to provide that without having the residents have to teach those staff. And the residents get tired of that. They appreciate just having the same caregivers come in, and they know that this is how this person takes care of me and facilitates my life here. And the more we can retain those staff, the happier our residents are, and then the happier their word of mouth is.
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with Marissa. One of the things that when I first got into senior living, it was drilled into us that residents first. Residents always come first. And I talk to my management team often about how, for our caregivers, yes, we do need them to think along those lines that our residents come first. But in terms of us as managers, we need to think in terms of our employees come first, because if we take care of those employees, and it'll lead to a good culture here. It'll be a fun place to work, even though we work hard. And our employees will take care of our residents and their families. And we need to remember that those families are also customers of ours too, and that it's not just the resident that lives in our facility. And so, we may have 40 some residents in our facility here, but we need to remember we have way more customers than that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, great. Well, before I jump into my conclusion, Chad and Marissa, any other thoughts you'd like to share from any of the topics that we discussed? Any kind of closing comments you'd like to share? If
The,
not,
the
that's
only
fine.
thing that I've thought of is that as an administrator, I think administrators need to remember you don't have to go it alone. You have people, if you're lucky enough to have other managers that work under you, have a good management team. Don't be afraid to. Not everything has to be work. Sometimes it's have coffee together. Sometimes it's getting together outside of the building to do things. It's just important to keep a good work-life balance, uh, so that we can stay healthy and take care of our teams.
Yeah, good thought. Very good.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would want to say is something that
Hey, lost your audio. You still there, Chad?
I'm still here. Are you able to hear me?
I hear you. Yeah, I think we lost Marissa.
Okay.
She must have lost. What we'll if she comes back in the next couple seconds, we'll give her a chance to finish her comment there. But just to kind of wrap up, we're kind of at the end here of our presentation. So just a little brief conclusion. There's countless tactics that we can talk about to kind of improve staffing. Like, many facilities, especially the ones that operate multi-facility, like 30, 40 facilities, I found that building their own float pool kind of allows them to not need the outside agency because they have that pool of people in their own organization that they can draw from. And that kind of goes back to the founding of even my company. My co-founder, he was a casual nurse working 3 different hospitals. The hospital industry, especially in the rural areas, have had that idea of float nurses floating between departments of, maybe the ICU or the ER would float back and forth, or floating between multiple facilities. Has been a tactic they've used for decades. So that many of the senior living, long-term care, assisted living are starting to do that as well. So that's a good tactic you can try. Paying bonuses, like if you've got those extra hard to fill shifts, maybe your staff know that if they work the third ward on a Friday night, they're going to have to do a very difficult shift. You might need to incentivize that with a little bonus on that shift. Or like Chad mentioned earlier, allowing partial shift pickup. It may be impossible to find someone to work that 12-hour shift, but if you break it up, maybe 2 people will work it together and you'll still get that covered. The list goes on and on. We could go on with many different ideas and tactics that we can use, but really, nothing's a magic bullet, but the real key, if we were to boil it down to one key thing that we've really, I think you've noticed has been the theme of our discussion, is building that positive, healthy culture. It really affects everything. It affects how your staff feel. It affects how you can hire. It affects how your current staff help you hire more staff, what they say to people in the community, what they say to their friends to come work at your facility, how the families feel about their family members being residents at your facilities or being patients at your facilities. It all ties together to building that culture. You want to be the place where people want to work, and it can be done, and things are going to improve. Together, we can fight back against the staffing shortage. So, Chad, Marissa, is it okay for those listening to reach out to you directly? Is there any way they can get a hold of you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. People can find me on LinkedIn. I can also be reached by email, and I'm happy to respond to email questions that people may have, or if they want to kind of continue the conversation. My email address, for anybody that wants it, is chadl@maplecrestal.com.
Very good. Yeah. So Marissa, are you back? Did we get your audio back?
Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure. Technology, right?
Yeah. So would it be okay for our listeners to reach out to you directly?
Oh, sure. Please do. Please do. Yes, I'm also on LinkedIn, and my email is.
Oh, we think
Checking
lost her
emails
again.
now for the next month or so.
Yeah. Can you say your email again? I think you cut out.
Oh, sure. mjanky@eaglecrestlife.org.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. Well, all right. Well, back to Jim Berkland.
All right. Well, thank you, all three of you. Just an outstanding presentation. Nice to hear from the front lines. And we're going to jump to some questions that have been submitted. We've got a few minutes here, so we'll rattle through whatever we can as quickly as we can. Jeff writes in, and Chad, I think maybe I'll go to you first on this one. Is hourly compensation the largest problem in staff recruitment?
I think for many years, Jim, we thought that the hourly wage was the biggest incentive. And we've certainly, within our own organization, raised our wages over the last few years to a much more competitive wage. I find that the flexibility and feeling like somebody's part of a team makes a bigger difference than even that hourly wage. I've had employees that have wanted to. That have been offered other opportunities making more money, but they don't want to leave here because they enjoy working with the team that we have here with our residents and are afraid with what they might be jumping into.
Sure. No doubt need to be competitive, but if all things equal, it's probably going to make a difference, is what we're hearing as well, too. Marissa, Susan has a nice question here. Any tips on navigating away from the quote, "we're short-staffed" as the default answer to everything? Certainly it's tempting, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think the more that you can remind the staff that, yes, you may be without the fourth person that you're supposed to have, but you have each other. I'm here to help. And as the leader, then really stepping out on the floor and knowing that meal times are busy. I'm going to get out there regardless of what is on my calendar today, unless it's an interview. Pretty much everything else can be pushed. And so I'm going to get out there and help and support in especially those busy times. And then the staff appreciate and see that you're willing to be a part of that team.
Great. And I think that segues into a great question that Katie had sent in here that let me see if I can go back to you, Marissa, right away. Is how do you keep yourself motivated and positive in an industry that's so challenging?
Yeah, it's, I think sometimes it has to just be a little bit in your nature. I'm myself kind of a annoyingly positive person at times, but then also recognizing that, you have to be the cheerleader. As the leader, you have to be the one that's on. You have to be the one that's building people up, but then in turn, figuring out how you're taking time to build yourself up as well. And if that's just you doing it for yourself, or if you have a good core group of support people, either within your team or your personal life, really leaning on those people. And I think if any of us have lived through this pandemic, we've known and needed that more than ever.
Okay, Chad, I want to give you a quick shot at that one too, because we have another great question that just came in.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Marissa said. I think it's really important that when we are having a challenging day to, when we step out of our office and out onto the floor, that we need to remember we're the face of the organization. We're the leader of the team. They're looking for that comfort from us to let them know everything's going to be okay. And so sometimes it's just remaining positive. It's there are days that are challenging, and reminding people that we'll get through this. We just work together. let's take one task at a time. And I think as a leader in the organization, what I find I need to do sometimes is sometimes I just need to remember that taking care of myself isn't being selfish. Sometimes I need to take a few minutes to myself, or I need to take time to get outside or listen to music or whatever it might be, to not be afraid to put work down for a short time.
Okay, outstanding. And I do want to get to this one from Claire. I'll go back to you, Chad, for some quick thoughts. She writes in, how can we increase the utilization of in-company pool versus the usage of outside agency? Shouldn't actual employees that have been vetted to provide care be better for the community rather than an unknown?
I would agree, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't used agency staff so far. I've created an in-house pool of employees. We refer to them as casual employees in our organization. And they, by having a pool of casual people, they go through all the same training, the same amount of training as our full-time staff or our regular part-time staff. We do pay our casual staff, our pool staff, a couple dollars more per hour because they don't get used as often as the other staff. They don't receive benefits. And so, I agree that they know our residents and their families better than an agency staff person might. So,
Jim, this is actually something that I created recently, where we have staff that are willing to be on call that's separate from our on-call staff, or probably what the casual staff maybe that Chad is referring to, where it's entirely optional for them. We talked with our team and said, how can we combat some of the call-ins that we're having? Because again, things happen, and all of the call-ins were legitimate. And so we created this option for our staff to pick up an on-call shift where it's just a PM or a night shift. And we know that if there's a call in during that time and their name is on that block, they're going to be called and say, hey, we had a call in tonight for PMs, or we had a call in tonight for nights. I need you to come in. And it's worked surprisingly well, where the staff, I told them up front, my only concern with this is that we're going to have an increase in call-ins, because staff would say, oh, well, Susie's on backup tonight, so I'm just going to call in. And we have not had that, actually. But then when the staff do have something legitimate come up, they call in and say, hey, I've got such and such going on. I'm sick tonight, or my child is sick. And we know that we can just pull that person, and it's not nearly as stressful as a call-in usually is.
Okay, outstanding. That's really core to what this presentation is today. Now, I also told each of you that the toughest question today is going to come from me, because you've talked over so many good topics and so much good advice. I wanted to have you each take 20, 30 seconds. What is the one thing you really want the listeners and viewers today to take from this presentation? Chad, I'm going to go to you first. What's the one thing, quickly?
I would say, no, you're not doing this alone. Ask for help. There's a lot of valuable resources that are out there to help you through these challenging times, and know that this too will get better. It always does change and it gets better. So even the most challenging situations that I've found myself in, surround myself with a good team, and we work together. So it's asking for help when I need it.
There you go. Marissa, what is your one point?
My thing is just remember the residents. We all went into this business because of them. And so when you're having a bad day, go and chat with one of your favorite residents, and they will very quickly remind you of why you decided to join this crazy industry of long-term care.
Outstanding. Michael Christensen, what is your one thing?
Well, in 10 seconds or so, just really want to thank everyone for listening. We know it's been hard. We're empathetic to that, but don't lose faith. We will get through this. And, sometimes the counterintuitive thing is really the solution. So we want to, keep focusing and doing the right things. And you can have a facility where people want to work and overcome these challenges.
More good advice. Well, there you have it, folks. Great stuff as always. I really hope you've enjoyed this webcast. I know I have. This session will be available shortly, as I said, at mcknights.com/021523, Workforce Development Forum, all smushed together. We want to give our special thanks to Chad Liptow, Marissa Janke, and Michael Christensen for some excellent discussion on how to fight back against staffing shortages. We also want to thank our session sponsor, Easy Shifts. Check it out at easyshifts.com. We want to thank you, our listeners. Now, get ready for our final session in today's McKnight's Workforce Development Forum. That'll start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's in just about a half hour. The title is The Untold Secrets to Optimizing Your Senior Living and Care Workforce. You won't want to miss it. Once again, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you again at all future McKnight's events and webinars. This is Jim Birkeland for McKnight's, wishing you good health and outstanding days ahead.